to fail. Sometimes, though, you just can't plan things. You just have to go with circumstances as they come and deal with them as they arrive at you. But there are those in the consulting world that will say, well, maybe so, but you still need to have a plan. You still need to have in place that you can measure your progress against, right? So you can measure whether you're succeeding or whether you're failing. And if you get signals in the body of your laborers with feedback from the customer and suppliers that you're falling short, you have an alarm system to tell you, hey, things are not going well. Pay attention over here. You've got to work on this because your numbers are showing decline and or loss. There's friction in every business. There are plans that are made and ignored. There are also ways of measuring progress that you have in front of you. Sometimes they're very simple. It just may be the balance in your checking account. But there are other signals for measuring your operation. What about your supply chain? What about the means of getting goods into your plant or into your restaurant or business, or getting numbers of things or entities or bits of software or code, what have you? What about your supply chain? Are there problems there? Is there an efficiency that you can bring in there if you just knew how to view the data, if you just knew how to organize the data? But you're so busy, you, my listener, you're so busy, you just don't know how to get together, set the time apart to figure out, okay, how do I look at what I have? I have so much to look at and so many hours in a day on my supply chain. The friction, the loss, the heat in that part of your business. Well, this is David Tulis, and we argue for local economy and free markets here in Chattanooga and beyond. We are all new Nooga Radio, 92.7 and 95.3 HD4. That's high definition, channel 4, Chattanooga's new favorite home for news and talk. To answer these questions about supply chain management and the friction in your business, since I'm trying to figure out how to help you, I have here with me an expert in that field. His name is Enrique Vizoso. He left Kenco Logistics in last year and now runs his business, Vizoso Business Solutions. And that is his area of expertise, supply chains and the losses and friction and heat and inefficiencies there. Enrique, how do you approach people who have this problem but don't know they have the problem? How do you tell them, hey, I may have a solution for you?
First, David, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. And Merry Christmas to you and your listeners. It's good to be here and have the opportunity to help your listeners maybe improve a little bit of the business. I really love and have passion for improving business. And as I have left the corporate world, and started helping businesses improve, one of the things that when I go into a business and start asking questions around, well, how do you know you're performing? And what measurement do you have? What I have sometimes found is most businesses will have a profit and loss statement, so they'll know what are my sales, what are my costs, and how much money I'm going to be making. But sometimes they're not measuring performance in parts of their process, and that can be a significant gap and significant problem. So, for example, one of the areas that foments your growth is service and serving your customers. So how well do you know if you're serving your customers? I've encountered some businesses that when I've asked them, well, what % of the time, if you have a customer that placed an order and they wanted 10 items today, December 22nd, how well did you serve that customer, and what percentage of the goods that they ordered that they wanted on December 22nd, what % of them did they receive? And I've been somewhat surprised that sometimes businesses, manufacturers cannot answer that question. And that's an area that really becomes, and you really be able to help them understand, okay, what are those customer orders? If they wanted it on December 22nd, it's for a reason. And there's very simple ways in which you can measure the delivery performance. If they order 10 things and they got 9, well, guess what? You deliver at 90%. Well, industry standards today in manufacturing and distribution is you have to be at least at 95%. And you actually have some buyers that if you don't perform at 95%, they can actually start penalizing you. And some of these companies that I'm doing work for are actually having to pay penalties for not being able to maintain the service levels to those standards.
Well, give an example of how a penalty might be imposed on my listener and his business if he's the supplier. What's in the contract? give an example of how that would take effect and how that penalty or price additional cost would be imposed on the supplier.
So there's, I'll mention, because this is widely known if you're in the business, but if you're, for example, you're shipping to a Walmart, one of the biggest retailers in the United States and somewhat of the world, and you're a supplier to Walmart, you're going to have in your contracts that if you do not perform and service at a certain level, they actually directly penalize you a certain percentage of your sales or certain fees if you don't attain and deliver on schedule, which, by the way, with Walmart now also is not only, sometimes we used to think, well, if I'm there early, I cover my back and therefore I get out of trouble. Well, the Walmarts of the world are saying, hey, early is not on schedule either. You have to be on schedule, and they give you a window, but late or early from that window, and you can start incurring penalties.
How are these penalties assessed, Enrique Vizoso?
It can be in a number of ways, but there's typically that percentage or that fee that will be deducted or credited to your invoicing to that customer. And they would automatically just assume, well, guess what? Yeah, your invoice was for $5,000. There's a $200 penalty. So I'm just going to pay you $4,800. So it's not a means in which you can even contest or try to delay a payment of that penalty. It just gets deducted straight from your invoice.
We're talking with Enrique Vizoso, who runs Vizoso Business Solutions. He's a supply chain consultant and expert, left Kenco in 2016. Now, Kenco, which began in 1950, has become a major player, I think probably a national player in supply management, logistics. It's a warehouse operation with computers. What did you do there, and what was the circumstance of your departure and your entry into your own business, Enrique?
Kenco is a third-party logistics service provider, so providing distribution and transportation services to really top 50 companies in the United States. I mean, you've got some really big names that they serve and provide really a very, very wide range of services. I was group vice president of operations, so I had responsibility for the industrial segment of customers, and so it was really all through operations and the execution of distribution networks. And it just really came to the time. I'd been with them for 11 years, and it was really time to go and do something. I've been in prior to being in distribution, I spent 16 years in manufacturing, in distribution, so 31 years of experience, fairly balanced between manufacturing and distribution.
What did you manufacture?
I worked for Aluminum Company of America. Aluminum, actually producing aluminum from the ore, from the bauxite ore. And then I also worked for Cummins Diesel Engines. Cummins Diesel Engines was one of the most fun. We're remanufacturing engines, so taking used engines like new. It's a lot of fun. So, that 16 years of manufacturing, that's when I went into distribution with Cummins and started working in distribution of service parts. Service parts distribution with Cummins for 5 years. That's when I went to work for Kenco.
Being the owner, not just the servant.
It puts a lot of pressure. It puts a lot of pressure. There's a lot of parts of the business that I didn't used to have to think about it. And the other part is also, as a consultant, really you do it all. You do your sales, you do your administrative work, you do your finance work, documentation, clerical work. So you have to be really wear all hats of a business. Now,
are you doing all that yourself, or do you have so much to do, Enrique Vizoso, that you hire someone to handle, let's say, administration or some part of your?
So far, my key assistant really is the president of the company, which is my wife. And she has helped me with all sorts of things, going from editing documents, application and solutions to helping my business track business. There's a customer relationship management softwares, and she did the research for those softwares and selected which software we need to use. So Bunny is the one that's supporting the business.
Well, what does my listener need to know, Enrique, about his business? What are some main, perhaps we could say, that he can learn from you about his supply management? He needs to know, generally speaking.
Well, I would say that a basic tenet, I would say, is talk to your people. If you're a manufacturing or distribution operation, people, and you need that. There's two key questions. When you look at lean and lean methodologies, philosophical approach to how to improve your business and eliminate waste, improve speed. One of the key tenets that in lean is respect your people and involve your people, engage your people in the business. Questions, very often when we talk to employees about how's the family, what are you doing, how Christmas, and those are important, but you cannot stop there. You have to ask your employees is what's getting in your way. You're winning today. Do you feel like you're winning today, and do you understand if you're winning today? These don't have any obstacles and are winning. Your business is going to be able to improve its efficiency. It's going to improve its profitability with your customers.
Well, it sounds like, Enrique Vizoso, that you're proposing a local economy standard, nostrum, and that would be the hearer, that's the listener, should have and probably does have a desire to make his staff successful in what they do. Successful people are doing respected, and thinking always want to help that man, that salesman, or that line worker, or that manager of these machines, or the repairman. I want them to be successful. I want them to be gratified that they can do their job, that they're not unreasonable things blocking them from successfully. If I help them to succeed, then I will bear at some point the fruit of their success, which will be that of the business, which I own.
When you look at employee engagement, it's been proving, and there's, Gallup, which is a very surveying and getting information with regards to performance, that businesses that have engaged employees, their profitability will be 10 to 20% higher than businesses that do not have engaged employees. And engaged employees really start by having that conversation, that listening of be an owner or a manager, and listening to those employees, understanding how they can support their employees in becoming successful, because at the end of the day, those employees are going to be driving a very significant portion of the success of the business. So they are a key tenet to the success of the business.
Do you have any horror stories you can tell about mismanagement, Enrique?
Well, if we can we'll get into some horror stories, but we're going to avoid having any names just to make sure we protect those people. But one of the worst cases you can get into, staying with employees and staying with regards to engagement of employees, is when you get into situations where employees are working hard. By the end of the day, they're tired, they're physically tired, and they feel like they have to go home to rest. And, instances in which you talk to those employees and you find out why they're so tired. And what you come to realize is that they're running all day, but the amount of work that really they're getting done is extremely small. Because, for example, in a distribution operation, a case in which you have to go find parts to be able to fill orders, well, the parts are not where they're supposed to be. And when the parts are not where they're supposed to be, then that person has to run to go find where those parts are and to go get it to a supervisor and tell the supervisor, I can't find the parts. And the employees are so worn out from trying to do their job, because they're really trying to get things done, but because things are not where they're supposed to be, they're inefficient, and they're, once again, just physically tired.
Jamie McGee is an important reporter in Tennessee. She works in Nashville, and she has a story published in USA Today Network out of Nashville. The dateline is Camden, Tennessee, and it touches on the opioid epidemic. And it makes mention of a company that I think is using some of your ideas, Enrique Vizoso of Vizoso Business Solutions. The company is called Jones Plastic and Engineering, and the story starts off with an interview with a plant manager, Eric Hicks. And he says when an employee has a drug problem, he doesn't just think about firing, but he says, look, you seem to be having a problem. Let's see about getting help for you. And so what's happened in that business in Benton County, which is a very rural county, he says that he's reduced turnover, he's reduced absenteeism, and drug test failure rates. And that is because all have dropped significantly. And that's because he really cares about these individuals and he wants to help them. He effectively wants them to be successful. And and there's a value in every employee who especially knows your business, a man who's been with you for several years, knows everything inside and out about one whole part of an operation. You don't want to lose him. And so if he's having a problem with an addiction to opioids, Jamie McGee suggests in her story, you have an asset to keep and maintain. So how does that come into some of your work in the supply chain consulting field, Enrique?
Well, it's about the culture you're trying to drive, right? Because when in consulting of supply chain, it's all about driving improvement and about how can you improve the efficiency of your business and your process, and you can't do it without your people. So that is a perfect example of when you demonstrate that you care for your people, you're listening, you're willing to be there. People will put forth their effort and contribute to the business. And just very briefly, an opportunity we had in which we're talking to some individuals, there's some shipping errors that are taking place.
I didn't hear that. Shipping errors?
Shipping errors. So you're shipping the wrong items or the wrong quantities. And you start talking to people about why is that happening? And you start hearing it, well, it's just that these products are not properly labeled. So sometimes you don't really have all the good labels, and therefore I'm getting the wrong items. So just sometimes very simple things as that perfect example of how you engage employees, you listen to employees, you can make very simple changes in order to be able to correct problems that are affecting your customers.
And that's because employees, Enrique, are human beings made in God's image. They all have souls. They're not just human resources. And so what you're suggesting is that the listener, if he runs a business, in improving his supply chain management, he needs to have a local economy perspective. And that would be favoring personal over corporate. Your employee is a human being, and he's an image bearer of God, and so he has a duty before God to serve you in this capacity. And your job as the owner or the manager is to make his job easier, to make it better, to make him successful, to make him glad at the end of the day that he's tired, but not for frustrating and fruitless reasons, but because he got the product out, he got the right number out, the right quantity, the right grade, and so on.
Yeah, and as human beings made in God's image, we all have different skills, and we're good at some things and not so good at others. And recognizing that, well, some people may need a little more help in an area, but they also may be excellent at something else. Some people are excellent in counting. Other people have better attributes or better aptitudes towards physical labor. And it's really recognizing what those are to best match those employee skills to the needs of your business. And it's a win-win. The employee is making best use of the skills, and you're able to get an individual who's performing extremely well because they fit very well with their job.
And if the business is small enough, it's very possible that employee may be given a share at some point. You want to keep that person, and you want to give him more than just the wages, but you want to make him a partner. That's how I became a part of this radio station. I was just helping the owner. I was helping. And he said, you act like an owner, not just a friend or not just employee. And so here, you don't have the company. And that's how I'm a radio station owner, because I was looking out for somebody else. And my goal always was, Confederate Mike, I'm going to make you successful. And here I'm an owner with him, and we're partners. So that's how a faithful staffer whom you've helped to be successful as employee, you, the owner, you've brought someone in, and you were glad to have him. He knows everything about your field. He's open to correction. He's open to suggestions, and knows that you're open to suggestions and corrections too. That's why he's valuable. He gives you some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it may be ownership, but another customer I'm working with, we're implementing an incentive system, which is based on, it's a performance pay, right? Based on how well the company does, you share those benefits with the employees. And that is another very powerful tool that you can use to promote individuals. And as soon as we started talking about incentive-based pay, employees immediately started saying, okay, so now tell me, what is it that I can do? How can I improve the performance of the business? So employees that had been there a long time, that had not been, let's say, motivated to ask those questions, now they say, okay, I've got a financial stake. I can actually improve and bring more money to my family at home if I better understand how I can help the business.
Well, that sounds like a great idea, Enrique Vizoso, that we get more people in Chattanooga to think of in terms of incentives for staff
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. It's a great tool. Only 27% of companies use incentive schemes, and that really, it's something that should be much higher than that.
Well, with your help, Enrique Vizoso here in Chattanooga, we'll raise that to 30% in the next 5 years.
Everyone counts. One at a time.
Okay, and how can my listener get a hold of you?
You can contact me through LinkedIn. It's all my contact information is there. My email is Enrique at VizososSolutions.com.
Enrique at VizososSolutions.com. That's VIZOSO Solutions.com. Enrique,
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate being here. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. This is David Tulis. We're glad you are here. It is Friday. We should say again, love your neighbor and buy local. And if you need any kind of help in marketing, make sure you contact me, David Tulis. I write pretty good commercials, okay, pretty good ads, and I love to help you. Or contact Sam Jordan, our sales manager, or Dean Bustento, another one of our sales team. Great marketing people, and we just love Chattanooga. We want you to love your neighbor and buy local, and make sure that you take advantage of Rico's Pizzeria and Italian cuisine. Buy one and get one today. Buy one and get one at Rico's.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital.